All right, Lana, the results are in.
Indeed.
And former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden have both won their respective primaries in New Hampshire.
Their victories move each candidate one step closer to a repeat matchup of the 2020 presidential election later this year. President Biden scored his victory in the Granite State with a write-in-only campaign. And CBS News projects that former President Donald Trump defeated Nikki Haley with around 55% of the vote. That's just over 10 percentage points lower than polls had initially suggested.
And here's what's interesting. While Trump claimed the win in the Granite State, Nikki Haley chalked up her second-place finish as a win for her campaign. The two spoke to their supporters following the primary.
With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. This court case, that controversy, this tweet, that senior moment. You can't fix Joe Biden's chaos with Republican chaos.
We've won almost every single poll in the last 3 months against crooked Joe Biden, almost every poll. And she doesn't win those polls. And she doesn't win those. This is not your typical victory speech, but let's not have somebody take a victory when she had a very bad night. She had a very bad night.
Joining us now from Manchester, New Hampshire, is CBS News political director Finn Gomez. Finn, great to see you all bundled up there. It's interesting because you have both candidates claiming New Hampshire as a win for their respective campaigns. Clearly, though, former President Trump now has the momentum, right?
Yeah, even though both candidates claimed last night that they had won in their own way, there really was only one actual winner, and that was Donald Trump, who won the New Hampshire primary by about 10, 11 points. Now, Nikki Haley did claim victory as well because her campaign says that if you compare his win in Iowa just about a week ago, Errol, where he won with 30 points, last night's loss to Donald Trump, about 10 points, shows that they are increasing their progress, right? She claimed her victory. She's also vowing to continue on into this primary. She's looking ahead to South Carolina, her home state, in exactly a month from today, actually, Errol, where she's looking to take on Donald Trump. It is a two-person race, they say, and they feel that they can accumulate some of that support of the anti-Trump, more moderate or more establishment Republican part of the party to sort of be more competitive towards the front runner. However, Donald Trump does have some clear momentum with that double-digit win last night.
Well, Finn, I want to follow up on something that you said, that Haley hadn't essentially gained 10 points on Donald Trump. Still, the former president is claiming that this is it. What does, even though if she's gaining supporters, but he's amassed all the wins so far, what is the strategy for the Haley campaign going forward?
Well, you know, I talked to her campaign manager recently, and she told me that I asked her a question about that very question that you asked, Lana, and she said, how do you beat an elephant? And she said, one bite at a time. And essentially what they're looking to do is they feel that there are states between now through March 5th, which is Super Tuesday, about a dozen states that either have semi-open or open primaries. What that means is that independents can vote in those primaries, similar to here in New Hampshire. However, if you look at that map, Alana, if you look at those states between now and through Super Tuesday, even though some of them may be friendlier terrain, a lot of them are winner take all. And what that means is even if she nets 49%, let's say, hypothetically, and Donald Trump gets 50%, he would win all of those delegates. So it is an uphill climb, but they still vow to continue on.
I like that soundbite and phrase, but it sounds more like how to eat an elephant.
That's what it is, how to eat an elephant.
I'm sure you were thinking that too. So, Finn, we know that President Biden won the New Hampshire primary as a write-in candidate. And for the uninitiated, just explain how that came to be and why the write-in win is actually significant.
It's really over a dispute between President Biden and the DNC, the Democratic National Party. And essentially, they shifted the calendar this year for the first time in decades. And what they did is they moved South Carolina up to be the first on their calendar. However, because of the Constitution here in New Hampshire, they were still they're still supposed to go first. But because of that, the DNC penalized the New Hampshire Democratic Party, and there were no delegates awarded last night. Therefore, there was no name. The president's name was not on the ballot. However, despite that, the president still won easily with 51% of the vote within that write-in campaign by his supporters here. The closest opponent to President Biden was Congressman Dean Phillips, the Minnesota congressman, who has essentially launched a long-shot insurgent campaign. One quick historical context, point of reference, LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, in 1968, same thing happened to him, where he was written in. He narrowly beat Senator Eugene McCarthy in that primary, and soon after he dropped out. However, there was such a huge margin there that the president, as he said even last night in Northern Virginia at a rally there, continues to go on. He's the clear and dominant frontrunner in that primary race.
Very interesting stuff there. Finn Gomez, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins us now from outside of the White House. So, Nancy, how are the folks there responding to last night's results?
Well, they've got a lot to say, Lana. They argue that it looks like President Trump basically has this primary wrapped up after victories in both Iowa and New Hampshire. They say it's clear that he is going to be the nominee, and they are moving into general election mode. But they are arguing that he is going into that general election as a hobbled candidate. They say that he underperformed in Iowa and New Hampshire with college-educated voters, with independent voters, with younger voters. And they argue that those are all the types of people that he would need to be victorious over Joe Biden in the fall. Beyond that, they're arguing that his campaign has been blowing through finances, while the Biden campaign, has a record amount of cash on hand. So they're trying to set this up as a race between a confident and well-funded presidential candidate, the current incumbent president, and Donald Trump, who they're sort of painting as wounded. And to be honest, they're thrilled that Nikki Haley is still in the race to make a lot of their arguments for them about the cognitive state of Donald Trump, about his lack of support among independents. They're all too happy to have her stay in the Republican primary for now and make that case to independent voters.
And Nancy, there's always a clear separation between a president's actual White House staff and the re-election campaign. And apparently President Biden is poaching one for the other, taking some White House aides and moving them over to his re-election campaign team. Who are they, and what's behind that move?
Right. And it's always tricky when you've got a president running for re-election. He's got his closest longtime aides with him in the White House. Those are, of course, the people he wants to be heavily involved in the campaign as well. But it's pretty difficult to do both. And there were some outside Biden allies who were concerned about the dichotomy between top campaign staff, top White House staff, and they worried that setup made it a little clunky, made the campaign slower to make decisions because everything had to be run through the White House. So now you've got two top Biden White House officials, Jen O'Malley Dillon, who is currently the deputy chief of staff here at the White House, who was campaign manager for President Biden's victorious campaign back in 2020. She is leaving the White House and going over to the campaign to be the campaign chair. And then Mike Donilon, one of his longest serving advisors, who is currently a senior advisor here at the White House, he will be leaving as well, and he'll serve as a chief strategist at the campaign. Truth be told, they had been doing a lot of this campaign work already, but they were splitting it with their White House duties, and the president clearly felt that it was time for them to focus more completely on the campaign, especially, campaign aides tell me, now that some of these Republican candidates have dropped out of the race sooner than they initially expected.
All right, Nancy Cordes at the White House.